We're now recording. It's 9 o'clock. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Baltimore County Board of Appeals. With me today is our board members Sharon Bernardi and Deborah Dopkin. We're here for a public deliberation in case number CBA-22-193-SPHA. The petitioner is Carlos Levine. And Mr. Levine is requesting essentially two aspects of relief for the property at 9402 Ryan's Way. This is in Perry Hall. He is requesting he has filed a request to have a special hearing in order to determine whether the building which he proposes to build on site is an accessory use building, an accessory building. That's issue number one. And then he is assuming that we're to answer that question in the positive, he's requesting a variance, a height variance of 21 feet as opposed to the mandated 16 feet. Mr. Levine was represented by Adam Rosenblatt from Venable. People's Counsel was also participated in the hearing. I think we had one witness, which was basically Mr. Levine, if I'm not mistaken. And his purpose in building, what he deems to be a garage is really it's a large garage because he has a whole bunch of classic cars and he wants to be able to store them on his property. I think according to his testimony, at this point, he has 17 classic cars. He's had as many as 21. When this matter was heard in front of the administrative law judge, and it's not particularly relevant because this is de novo, but there was a question about whether this was going to be his primary residence. That was one question, which clearly seems now to have been answered in the affirmative. This certainly is his primary residence. So the question is the dog wagging the tail or is the tail wagging the dog with regard to this building? Number one, and if it's the dog wagging the tail, is there a height variance appropriate under Cromwell? So I think I have laid this out correctly. Do my colleagues have I done this right? Have I framed the questions correctly?
I believe so.
Yeah, okay. Does anyone want to start?
Sure.
I mean, I can start. My basic take on this matter is People's Counsel. I think People's Counsel is skeptical that this is a hobby. I think that is what I get from the sense of the hearing, because it's so dramatic. And it's not like collecting stamps or coins or sports memorabilia or playing chess or anything like that. It is a huge, it requires a huge physical structure in order to house this hobby. And I think that People's Counsel is concerned that this is really not a hobby, that it's really it's a business in hobbies clothing, I guess. And I share that skepticism. I mean, I get it. That's not an irrational view in my estimation. I just don't think the record, I think the record reflects it as a hobby. And we would have to simply disbelieve everything Mr. Levine said in order to, in my estimation, deem this to be a business, not a hobby. So at the end of the day, my own view as to the first question is this an accessory use? I come out that it is on this record. And I don't know that there's anything that says that an accessory use can't be significant and that the building can't be large. I just, I don't think that's a requirement. It's, I think, untypical. Well, the situation we have here is not typical, but I don't think there's any per se restriction that would prevent it. So that's where I come out on that question. Anyone
I
want to
would
chime in?
agree.
Okay.
And
All
there
right.
were certain points made by Mr. Rosenblatt that support the accessory nature of the use, that are not inconsistent with the statute, with our zoning regs.
Right. Right. And, there is a question of how we construe BCCR section 101.1, the definition of accessory use, whether or means or means and. Very peculiar legal doctrine, frankly. It seems it doesn't really. It's not easily reconciled. That or means and means or, and whatever. Or means and or. But at least for the purposes of this case, I'm comfortable determining, or I'm comfortable finding that in the operative provision, which is subsection B, that the word or means or. I just think that it does here in context.
I think that's consistent with case law.
Right. And I noticed that Mr. Rosenblatt referred to my comment on that as wise. I take issue with that, actually. I don't think it was wise, but I'm always susceptible to flattery, so I guess that's okay. But I do think or means or here. So, so then we get to the question, I guess, I'm assuming this is all good with you, Ms. Bernardi?
Yes, I definitely believe we met those conditions in 101.1.
Okay. So then we get to the question of the variance. And so the question was, is this lot unique? And actually, as I recall the testimony, there's no, the lot, let's see, where did I have my notes here? The sewer line cuts off part of the property and it limits the footprint. This is also the only large lot in the area, and it's the only property not part of the HOA. I don't know if that's actually a feature of uniqueness, but it does have the sewer line in the back. There is a significant slope in the back. There are woods in the back. So it seemed to me that there is that it is, I would determine this to be a unique lot.
And I would agree, between the sewer easement and the slopes, which limit where an accessory building could be located. It distinguishes this property from other properties in the zone. If the slopes were not so severe and the sewer easement was not there, it's conceivable that the height variance would not be required because he could build over or down, and
Mhm.
he can't.
Right, right, right. So,
So it's affected differently than other properties
right.
if we
It
were.
also, I mean, I think it bears saying that, you know, it's largely hidden from the neighboring houses. And the immediate neighbors don't oppose it. I think it's a
The
little,
property across the street is not used residentially.
right, that's correct also. I think it's a little, I think it's a bit of an overstatement to say that that the neighbors support it. I think it's a little more accurate to say they don't oppose it. There's a meaningful distinction there, but
And there's screening and it's not higher than the houses. My
right,
one concern, even if we were to attach the conditions presented by Mr. Rosenblatt, after this owner leaves the property, it is my understanding that the zoning cases run with the land. That
right,
doesn't assure compliance. And I don't know if we can require that something be put in the land records, but I don't want this to be personal to Mr. Levine and not to a subsequent owner. I don't know if we have that authority, but that would be my only concern, and I'm not sure how to skin that cat.
right, right. I don't know either.
I imagine we could ask that there be something noted, that the case be noted somehow in the land record, that there be a reference to the case in any subsequent deeds. Can't enforce it, but we can suggest it.
Right. Um, I, I think it's an excellent point. I'm not, at the end of the day, not not worried too much because the house is new and I assume Mr. Levine is gonna live there a while, so I'm not sure when this property is gonna be transferred next, but, and actually he's, you know, frankly, once this garage is built, it makes the house makes it more unique. And it reduces the potential buyers out there, I think. But nonetheless, I think that's a good point, and I think we should put that in our opinion in some form or another. So,
I'll add it as a seventh condition that any deed transferring the property reference our decision in this case.
yeah, that would be good. That would be good. Right.
So they wouldn't limit that new homeowner for using the garage for another purpose, just as long as they don't exceed the height variance that would vary. That
Well, I don't think it limits them as much as informs them and discloses that there's a process.
Right. It can't be used for a commercial purpose. I think you can't use that structure for a commercial purpose. I think it's the bottom line.
I just wanted to be clear what we were restricting them from doing. And if it was their enjoyment, if they had some other purpose,
Yeah,
or as long as it wasn't.
yeah. Okay, so I guess we have a consensus here,
Yes,
and we will approve the rule in petitioner's favor in terms of the special hearing, and also rule in the petitioner's favor in terms of the variance. And at least with regard to the first question, I think we also acknowledge that People's Council's position is a reasonable one and certainly worthy of respect and consideration. And a lot of times common sense is common sense, but in this instance, I think the record is clear that this is not for a commercial purpose and that this is for a hobby. So, all right, we
well,
good?
thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
All right. Well, I want to thank council, both the People's Council and Mr. Rosenblatt. Their submissions were useful and succinct. And the cases they cited were quite helpful, actually, I found them to be. So,
Can Sunny stay on?